Good evening. Welcome to our regular scheduled board meeting. Thank you all for being present. At this time, we'll have our roll call.
Mr. Alexander?
Present.
Mrs. Baylor?
Here.
Mr. Bravo?
Present.
Mrs. Lasher?
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Reverend Walker?
Present. This time, we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. And do we have any?
We have the school board.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are very honored again to welcome our student board members, many of them except for one in the second row. We're just grateful for them and would ask that they would all stand. Salam, who is a member of our STEM high school, Akron Early, I was looking at your principal and saying STEM, Akron Early College. And we're grateful for her leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance. And again, grateful for all of our student board members. Thank you very much. Each of them will have a rotation, a turn to come and lead us in the pledge and also share with us some activity once they've begun. She shared what she did briefly during the summer, but the other students will have a little bit more to share as they move through the school term to give us words and information about what's going on in their school building. Thank you so very much. At this time, if we have community reflections. Any comments, reflections?
I'll start.
Yes.
We had our annual reception and open house for the Conrad C. Ott Scholars this past week. The scholarship started in 2012. This year, for 2019, scholarships are given to Aaron Larson and Christina Lamb. And for those who don't recognize the Conrad C. Ott Scholarships, it was named after obviously a former superintendent. And his legacy continues because he always thought professional development was very important.
Yes, next.
I had the great pleasure of speaking at the North High 60th reunion for the class of 1959 on last Saturday. If you'll notice my earrings, they gave me some Viking ship earrings. I know Bruce will appreciate them. They look exactly like the one that was on our yearbook, so I'm very excited about that. They had about 70 to 80 class members for a 60th class reunion. This has been a class, it happens to be my mother's class, and they've been meeting every 5 years for 60 years. As a class, they've decided they're getting together in 2 years because they'll be 80 that year, and they want to make sure they get as many of them there as possible. I had the great pleasure of giving an update on what North looks like today. And one of the most touching moments to me was I had all of the classmates raise their hand if their mother or if their parent or their grandparent spoke a language other than English. Knowing North Hill is what it is and has always been this wonderful place for international students, and 3/4 of the class raised their hand. So the theme of the evening was that the North High class of now and of 2019, 2020 is not all that much different than the class of 1959. It's just the languages are different, the cultures are different, but so much remains the same as far as hope, dreams, and success. And they were very touched by learning about what we're doing at the college and career academies. They were really excited. I have a few that want to come see North, so I'm going to be reaching out to Kim, that want to get inside the building. They're dying to get inside and see some of the new spaces. It's kind of fun for me because I can describe, I know what it looked like when they were there from my mom. I know what it looked like when Bruce and I went there in the 80s. And now to be able to say, well, the space that used to be the gym, that when you were there, that then was the library, is now. So they're very excited. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity and to have a legacy like we do on North Hill.
Anyone else? Yes.
I just wanted to congratulate Jessica Robb. She sits, actually we saw her tonight, she sits right out in front, and she was just recognized as one of the 30 for the Future members that the Greater Akron Chamber does. Really cool event, and she was among an amazing class this year. I also got to get some more information about a new program coming out of the Cleveland Browns. It's called Get to School. They are tackling chronic absenteeism, and they're looking at programs that they can integrate within schools to help kids want to come to school and have less chronic absenteeism. That's gettoschool.org is the website that they have right now, and they're currently in the process of looking for partners, if that means educators or community members or students themselves. And then also, there are a ton of events coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I just wanted to highlight a couple. The Kids Fun Run is this Friday. It's a totally free event for kids under 12. A lot of cool, like, runner swag that you get. You run a mile around Lock 3. It's kind of a superhero theme happening. And then also On the Table is happening October 3rd. Always, at least in the last couple of years, I think that they've been doing a fantastic event. I'm going to go to one talking about refugees and what education looks like in the community. So would just encourage everybody to check out On the Table and try to find a table to participate at. And I also just want to say it's really cool to have all of you here tonight, and our student board members, thank you so much for being here.
Anyone else? Just want to again highlight the Conrad Art Scholars, and they're on the second floor. There are pictures, photos of all the current and past recipients of that award. So if you have a moment, you can go up and take a look at that. Very wonderful program in collaboration with the University of Akron and our staff here, Mrs. Gijic and her staff and all those who work real hard in selecting the outstanding recipients of that scholarship. I had the opportunity to go to Robinson CLC and our networking and partnering with the United Way, where they had a family evening, activities, line dancing, basketball playing, tug of war, a number of activities to involve the community. So we want to thank the principal there and staff, and of course United Way. Famed Fathers Walk took place on, I believe, the 19th, and I had the opportunity to go to Resnick and to Case, where many fathers were present, making sure that their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren were in school that day. So it was a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with many organizations on that day. So I want to thank our principals at the various schools for making sure that that was done in an outstanding way. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Akron. Unfortunately, they did not win the game, but we were blessed in that Leggett CLC was given a donation from the foundation of $5,000. I want to thank Mary Outley Kelly, the principal, teachers, staff, and the students and parents who were out on that day to celebrate and who received that $5,000 gift. At this time, we have a request to address the board, and the person of Joan Evans, who will represent Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm sorry. I made a very bad mistake. To represent Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Thank you, Reverend Walker.
I think Mrs. Kelly
Yes,
Sally Kelly.
I'm gonna get that from her. Jackie Silas Butler,
Yes, hello,
Sister
everybody.
Dees, all of those wonderful people. I will get here.
Okay, I'll remember you. Hello, everyone. My name is, once again, Joan Evans. I am Chair of Educational Development for the Akron Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. And Delta Sigma Theta Sorority is a private, not-for-profit organization whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through established programs within local communities. The organization is a sisterhood of predominantly Black college-educated women. Now, the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, has partnered with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority to launch the Mental Health Across the Lifespan initiative. And this initiative seeks to raise awareness about issues affecting women and their families throughout their lifespan, including mental disorders such as postpartum depression and issues that can impact mental health, such as bullying and aging. And I see a lot of familiar faces here in October, on October 3rd, 2016. That was Blue Shirt World Day of Bullying Prevention. And all the APS students and staff were encouraged to wear blue shirts in solidarity against bullying. And on that day, the Akron Alumni Chapter, Akron Public Schools, and Akron City Council teamed up to sponsor a bullying prevention symposium for Akron Middle School students and their parents to kick off the 2016 National Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. The slogan for that event was "Stand Up for What's Right." Now, since that time, there has been a significant increase in verbal, social, and physical bullying and harassing behavior among students. And so what do? The Akron Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority are here to follow up on what we started in 2016. In fact, I did try to follow up a little bit with Yvonne Culver back at that time, but we kind of lost contact on that. So first of all, we would like to ask APS to partner with us again and encourage all students of the Akron Public Schools to wear blue shirts on the first Monday in October, which is October 7th, in solidarity against bullying and cyberbullying. And we would like for you to help us bring anti-bullying awareness to the city through a little press release of some kind. And second of all, since spring break is coming in April, I am requesting that my committee and possibly some of the counselors and teachers, and most important of all, a few students would get together with us to plan an anti-bullying awareness event in the month of March. So I know my time is probably up, but please take my proposal into consideration. And the students need us, so let's stand up for what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Ms. Evans. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Akron Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for their outstanding work in the Akron community. And I'm sure our student board members heard you, and hopefully you have an opportunity to speak with some of them before the evening is over to arrange those things in the coming year. Thank you. Okay, recognitions, communications. We have a presentation at this time, graduation. Mr. Mark Black, our Executive Director of Secondary Education.
If you guys could, there's a PowerPoint that was shared with you. If you could go to the first slide and click on the link. That will take you to a Padlet. And what you can do is while the presentation is going on, you can type your questions onto that Padlet, and then we'll view them at the end and address them.
It's, we don't have a link.
Just sent you an email. It's in your email.
Gotcha.
Pass that down. So Ginger. Oops.
All right, while you guys are logging on to the Padlet, we have several folks here from our graduation committee to talk to you about our class of 2019. Now, when Dr. McWilliams-Woods presented to you guys a week or so ago, she was talking about the class of 2018 and explained to you that the graduation data is in a year in lag. So we're not gonna come here with precise data, we're just gonna talk to you about how our students walk the stage, things that we put in place for them, and then we'll talk to you about the outlook moving forward for the class of 2020 and beyond. Okay? So with me, I brought the most important people probably in the room tonight, and that is the face of all of our high school buildings, and we know our high school is the flagship of each one of our clusters. Even though Mary talked about elementary being the foundation, we're the flagship of the cluster. And as the flagship of the cluster, we need a face that's very inviting and some shoulders that are very strong, because there's a lot of things that come at them, and they have to be able to keep us up on float, right, so that we can meet our goals. So we'll start here with Mr. McBride.
Hello. Hello, members of the board. And a couple things that. That's it? Oh, hi, I'm Becky.
You have to hold the mic, they're recording,
Can I drop
and
it?
so everybody has to. Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Green Pilata. I am the principal at Akron Alternative Academy.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Conley. I'm the principal at Akron Early College.
Good evening, everyone. I am Nicole Hughes. I am the campus principal at Bookdale CLC.
Good evening. My name is Yolanda Bradford, and I'm an academy principal at East High School.
Good evening. I am Michelle Marcus Kearns, and I'm the campus principal at Ellett CLC.
You want me to hold two mics? Good evening. My name is Larry Johnson. I'm the campus principal at Firestone Community Learning Center.
Good evening. Catherine Rodacker, campus principal at Kenmore Garfield High School.
Good evening. Kim Sabetta, campus principal, North High School.
Good evening. Dina Popa. I'm the campus principal at Akron STEM High School.
And our campus principals, this is the first year we're kicking off wall-to-wall academies, so they have a lot going on in their buildings. Redesigned schedule, which is an A-B block schedule that we're still working through, but it seems to be going pretty well, so that we can continue to uphold our district focus of being the #1 urban, but more importantly, drilling down to the results and the outcomes, because we know when we hand students off, we want to hand them off prepared, and we also want to focus on our graduation rate being 93% or higher. Some of our buildings fell into a priority status because of graduation. So we're really here to talk to you about how we're coming out of that status. I didn't say how we were trying to come out, how we're coming out of that status, okay? Because we got to preach the positive. And the way that we're going to do that is first by understanding how they got into the priority status, and then we'll talk about how we're going to come out. In order to do that, it takes a community of folks, okay? And every department is touched by our graduation committee. We meet once a month, and we have members from the Office of School Improvement to keep us grounded on the things that we have to accomplish to lead priority status, the Office of Special Education to talk to us about how we can have multiple ways for our students with IEPs to continue to aspire and graduate. Teaching and Learning designs our curriculum, our supports, our capstone options, and all of the things that our students need to meet the 21 credit requirements. Technology, Howard's department, they keep our Google folders as well as all of our graduation buckets so that we don't miss students and misinform them about their graduation. And then, of course, Rachel Tech from the College and Career Academies, how we're utilizing the wall-to-wall academies to keep us moving towards relevant learning within our classrooms. With that, we're going to have the Office of School Improvement talk to us about how we got the designation of priority for some of our buildings.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. James, Board of Education. So as Mr. Black said, this isn't new information, but we wanted to share it again to provide context into why our principals do the work that they do to address graduation. So when we talk about designations, school and district data is reevaluated each year by the Ohio Department of Education. Through that, they're determining which schools and districts need support based on their performance. So in 17-18 school year, student performance for APS outlined a concern with the graduation rate. Our 5 high schools were outlined as priority schools, as Mr. Black said. The rationale for them being in priority designation was because they fell below 67% with their graduation rate. Now, how's that graduation rate calculated? What they do, they take the total number of graduates divided by the total number of students in a graduating cohort. That cohort is called the 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate, and that's outlined by the federal government, not by the state of Ohio. So also in 2017 and 18, we saw a change when they took out the number of students with disabilities from the numerator, or the total number of graduates, but they left them in the denominator, or the total number of students in the graduating cohort. And that was if they were exempt from testing based on their IEP or tested through alternative assessments. So what the federal government deems as a standard graduation pathway is if students don't have any exemptions. Now, the Ohio School Report Card does not report the same percentage as what is defined as a designation from the federal government. So if you have a chance to look on your screen, what you'll see is 2017-18 4-year graduation rate for 4 of our high schools, Bookville, East, Kenmore, Garfield, and then North. And if you look, you will see that only one at the time falls below that 67.5% graduation rate. The funny thing that we found concerning is we don't know what that actual percentage is from the federal government. And it's not because we didn't ask or request that information, it just has not been provided for us. But if they did not make that change, you can see that 3 out of the 4 buildings in 2017-18 would have been above that 67%. And then if you go to the far right column, you'll see 2018-19, and you'll see percentages all above 67%. So this is a disclaimer. This is me, not Akron Public Schools. It was a little disheartening to have conversations with people from Ohio Department of Education to not be able to understand what the percentage is. So I think these are the rationales and why we work so diligently to address the graduation concern, because if we can't get all the information, we have to stay ahead of the problem. And that means we need to put things in place, and as Mark outlined, making sure every department at APS is working together to address the concern so our buildings are successful and we can outline the work that we're doing. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Black.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to have the principals. They're going to each take about a minute to talk to you about what they did to change some of their practices so that they stay at a respectable graduation rate and staying on course to meet our 93%. If you guys look towards the end of the PowerPoint, you'll see a slide that looks like this: 3-2-1 building principles. This is where you can click on those links and you can see their individual plans. So all that information is there. And the 3-2-1 is just a quick outline of some of the big rocks that they utilize to help their students become successful. So we'll start with Triple X.
Yes. Our high school is very different than all the others because we are the only high school that has 5th-year seniors in the district. Also, we contribute back to everybody else's report card, so we have an F for graduation rate. However, if you look at all of the high schools for their 5th-year graduation rate, you're welcome from my staff because that was all us. We have 5 different rules and regulations for each class year to graduate students, and my staff is very aware of all of them. There's a different overview. there's an overview sheet, graduation requirements by graduating class, and each one of them are different. The classes of 2017 and before are different than the class of 2018 and 19, which are also different than the class of 2020, which are also now different from the class of 2021-22, and then there's 2023. My staff is very aware of all of the different pathways, and each one of our students is met with individually by our counselor, and we look at the best way for this student to reach their graduation.
At Early College, our counselor meets with all of the seniors to conduct what's called a senior audit, looking specifically at their graduation courses that they need in order to graduate. They sign their copy, and that copy is then sent home to the parents. We also, any senior that is C- or below, we deem as in their college classes, they are placed in study halls. So they can have weekly meetings with myself, my campus or academy principal, my lead teacher, and my counselor. And we provide additional wraparound supports to review study skills in order to be successful in their classes. And then lastly, we have what's called a senior seminar, where the seniors meet weekly either with our counselor or our university counselor, and they focus on details on getting next steps, getting things in place for next year, getting steps ready, and getting things in order for them.
Good evening again, everyone. So Bookdale had a 91.2% of our total class for the class of 2019. 25% of those students earned their diploma using an OST pathway. The remaining students, about 248, credentials were earned, focusing primarily on the C434 pathway, which would be the information software pathway. We focused entirely on our high school intervention team to provide layered support for all of our seniors. And that consisted of weekly check-ins, daily check-ins, individual data tracking, practicing for all of their various web exams, in-class coaching, after-school coaching, parent phone calls, family meetings. We were harassing them in love, and we believe that it paid off, especially with the parent communication.
Good evening. East High School, we're last year we was the high school with the highest amount of students who earned their energy credentials. So we're really trying to push that this year with our graduating seniors who's not on track to graduate per their OST points. So we've checked to make sure every senior that's not on track to graduate is scheduled in C434 so they can get those credentials. Our counselors this week have been meeting one-on-one with students, going over their transcripts, going over what they need to graduate. We have interims this Thursday night. We've invited senior parents so we can go over transcript with the parents and go over what their students need to graduate. Our IET and data team, we're working with them. They've chosen to mentor a group of students, working with them on making sure they're getting their work done in the classroom, making sure they're getting that C434 work completed. Our counselors are working very hard with students, making sure they're getting their work done. We're utilizing our lead teacher, our campus support person, and our family liaison. She's reaching out to families to build that family school support so that we can support the students and ensure that they graduate on time.
Good evening again. At Ellett CLC, I could actually say ditto, because those are all the things that I think universally that we are all doing. We start our credit checks, as do all counselors, in the 9th grade. So all kids are met with throughout the years to see where they are and what we can do to catch them up before they're seniors and in this situation. A couple things we do, I'm sure as do others, is we have a pathway to graduation form that we use. And if you click on the link, it will come up. And so we use 2 forms with every senior in the building. We meet as a group, and then we divide into groups. And if you scroll down, you'll see the kids fill that out right there. They take it home. They have to sign it. The parent has to sign it. And then we also take advantage of the graduation pathway commitment form. So that would be the second link. Thank you. So when students are meeting with counselors and their principals, we look at the ways they're going to graduate. Which pathway are we meeting it head on, or do we need those alternative pathways? So again, they fill that out with the counselor and their now academy principal. It goes home, it comes back with the parent signature, and then during our interim nights, which we call progress nights now, we have family meetings where they come in and we do credit checks with their families, and then we talk about what's the route we're going to take to have your child graduated. We did have a number of students do the industry credential and the work keys. We also use C434, but we are, like Nicole said, around harassing them in love. We call home religiously. We have parents in. We document, we have our parents in and summarize what we talked about. We did have students take advantage of the Ohio Means Jobs also, so we're proud of that. And then we had senior teachers take the lead on the capstone. And so all of our students, whether that was their pathway or not, completed the capstone and then had to present to a number of teachers throughout the building. And we used a rubric to grade that capstone. So it was very eye-opening for the kids, but it was very important. We plan to just enhance those things that we're doing, and then having more intentional discussions, of course, because we're in pathways now with our kids. Those are also possibilities to get credentialing.
Thank you. So you're going to hear very little from me that's any different from what everybody else is going to talk about. The only thing that I would like to maybe touch on is last year we had a graduation rate of 98%. And when I met with my counselors at the beginning of the year, as I do every year, one of my counselors said, "Mr. Johnson, do you think the Patriots ever experience any hiccups on their road to the Super Bowl?" He was like, "Because it seems like every year we always have a great plan and then February hits," right? So we do the same thing. We have graduation talks with our seniors. We call them GPS, graduation position system. We meet with parents at our meetings during interim report pickup nights, and our counselors, and we have credit recovery mentors. And for most of our students, that is fantastic. They're motivated and they're ready. But in February, the plan changes, right? And I would say everything comes down to relationships, because at that point, it's one or two things. And it means either sitting down with the principal, and it means sitting down with the counselor, and it means sitting down with the principal and the counselor. And sometimes there's tears by everybody. And sometimes the student just needs a little love to keep moving. But a lot of things that we put in place in the district, a lot of the systems that we put into place in the district have been incredibly helpful. You've heard the C434. That's been fantastic. Right now we have 89 students that are participating in that. Of those 89 students, we think there's about 67 that are going to need to take advantage of that. The other 30-ish students are within 1 point of meeting the OST criteria that they'll take again in December. So there's a lot of different things that happens throughout the course of the year as the Patriots go through. There's a lot of things that happen throughout the course of the year, but at the very center of that is the dedication and the commitment and the relationships to their teachers, the counselors, the principals, the academy principals. Everybody has committed to getting every single student across the finish line. So that's Firestones.
So I will say it actually is a great transition from Mr. Johnson to myself about relationships. So last year we began in August. We put a picture of every single student and their name on an auditorium chair that was off track to graduate, and 73% of our senior class at the beginning of the year did either not were off track for credits or OST points. And so the staff then was up on stage and got to see it from that viewpoint of seeing how many students are off track. So then they each adopted one, and I know it sounds very elementary, but there is the kind of ownership of a student that takes on a different meaning when they're making the same phone call home all year long. When it got down to the end of the year, then we still had those students that no matter kind of what they thought they did, were the ones that weren't coming in. It was a lot of attendance issues. So our staff really, it really did come down to relationships where they were going out to their homes. We put door hangers on their homes. They spent their evenings there with them working one-on-one in credit recovery. Showcase Chicken was wonderful, delivering things for us. It was a great support. But it really kind of came down to that of like working through the evenings, and Saturday they held a credit recovery boot camp that really got a last push of kids. What we did notice at Kenmore Garfield, a lot of our students that do not cross the stage or the ones that struggle to the very end are independent living students, the ones that are truly on their own. They're already working 40, 50 hours a week and they're just not attending. So we are looking at that very differently this year. We're connecting with Kenmore Free Store to make sure that we can get things for them for their apartment clothes, so maybe they can work a little less, and we need to offer services a little bit differently. So that's what we're doing this year. Going into this year, the wonderful thing about being able to build a master schedule, brand new with the block schedule, is that we were able to revamp our credit recovery. So not only are we offering it every single period throughout both days, A day and B day, we have a second person in there too, so it's all co-taught. And then also we're providing professional development for those teachers to kind of set those goals and kind of keep them so we're not doing that last minute push.
Good evening once again. When I take a moment just to think about what North High School has done in the past year, it is a lot of some of the same things that you've already heard with regards to industry credentials, the work keys, the C434, taking a look at those opportunities that students have to reach alternate pathways. So we definitely continued on that path last year, and that's how we got many of our students to graduate. So we will continue with that as well this year. In addition to that, we're also trying to take a more proactive stance. Some of our students who are newer to the country and they come into the United States as older students, many times they would like to leave high school early so that they can begin working. We're really trying to be creative and proactive at whatever we can do to keep those students in school to make sure that they reach graduation. One of the things that you've already heard as well is the relationship component, and I think we have amazing adults at North High School who really try and have great relationships with students. And so when it comes to February, as Mr. Johnson has said, and the student may be not on track to graduate, we're really trying to, beginning now, be as proactive as possible, have those relationships with the students, and really do whatever it is and take whatever steps necessary to make sure that student crosses the stage.
Hello. So at STEM High School, we have 80 seniors and 11 are off track for graduation solely by having a shortage of OST points. We have intentionally built 4 components in the document you can see to help those students reach the same components that they use for industry credentials, Ohio Means Job Seals, and all those other opportunities. We have a community internship course, which starts them off with ACT prep for the first 6 weeks until that October 1st test, moving into the industry credentials and the Ohio Means Job components. And then in the springtime, they get placement for an actual internship as much as skills for resume building and interviewing that they would need for anything in the job world. We also have a STEM capstone course, which is slightly different than the capstones that the rest of the district uses. It's more centered and grounded in our design process, in our ideology of STEM, but still hits the state requirements for a capstone to graduate. We also look at College Credit Plus as an option for our students. They may not be college and career or college remediation free for the ACT to get over to the University of Akron or Kent State, but often they can take the AccuPlacer for Stark State and get into a different entry-level class and earn a 3 credit that direction. And then we also have OST and ACT prep classes. One of the components we really focused on this year was communication. Beginning in April, prior to their senior year, they're identified based on that remediation free score for the ACT, and if they do not meet that, they get a letter to their parents, and there's a link there explaining that we're going to have this opportunity for this internship course, which affords them everything they need to reach the graduation requirements. Then along the way, they have summer mailings, September family meetings, one-on-one meetings with families, and then they get adopted from a mentor as a staff member, again, leading into those relationships that everybody else talks about here. So all those components to make sure we get those 11 kids across the stage.
All right, so finally, we're going to have Yvonne Culver give you guys the results from all of the work that the principals did. She's just going to take you through a couple pie charts, And then, and Yvonne's representing College and Career Academies. And then Marcy is going to talk to you guys about our next steps with the class of 2020. And I promise you we'll be done.
So you've heard a lot of talk about the alternative versus the traditional, and you can see this chart, how that breakdown happened last year. So 61% of our students actually graduated via the traditional route. The traditional route means I either got 18 points on my 7 OSTs, that I got a 21, or I scored college ready with that 18 in English, that 22 in math, and that 22 in reading. Or for a lot of our students, as you heard the principals talk about, they were able to earn those 12 points of industry credentials and scored 13 on their work keys to go out the traditional way. So if the state had not made the allowances, 61% would have gone out on the regular way. And then the alternative, the state gave 9 options, and the students had to meet at least 2 of those options. So we don't believe in just getting to the minimum. So Mark, if you can go to the next slide. This slide shows you how many our students met. So if you look, 28, almost 29% of our students met 5 or more of those 9, and only 6% actually only met 2. So everyone else did more than what was required by the state in order to meet graduation requirements.
Marcy?
So as Yvonne just said, the 7 end of course exams, the C434, the ACT, SAT, those are pretty on targets. And of course, we've had the alternative options for the class of 18 and 19. But now there's some adjustments coming for 2020. We've worked to understand what they were from the state as they've come out and incorporate them into the practice that they've had. So you're gonna see some scratch-offs there. So some of those 9 items have been adjusted. One of them is that the 93% attendance rate during their senior year is no longer one of the 9 options. So kids have, or they have 8 instead of 9 this year to choose from. And their junior and senior year GPA must be a 2.5 average. For the class of 2019, it was just their senior year. So that's been an adjustment that we're working on to make sure kids are having that opportunity. The Capstone Senior Project, we've always defined it as our district capstone. I know Mr. James was with the state a lot, sharing our capstone process and what we've been doing. And it really reflected in what they brought back to us as guidance for across the state. I would say we were 95% of what they expected the guidance to look like. But we still had a group of senior teachers come in because we've embedded this capstone in the senior English classes across our campuses. And they looked at all the new requirements that the state said that we had to have. They made the adjustments, they owned it, they decided where they were putting that into their course and how they were gonna work with students on that. Rebuilt out the website so that we met the state requirements for how the capstone should look. The same thing happened with the 120 hours of senior work experience in community service. Before we had some leeway about how we defined it as a district, when kids could start it, how we recorded it. The state came out with just a little bit more structure around that, and we've incorporated that into our process. So for this class, 2020, students are still able to take advantage of those alternative options. There's just some adjustments and one less. Moving forward, of course, there's more adjustments, and you heard Becky allude to it, that we have almost, seems like every class has a different set of graduation requirements. So looking at 21 and 22, those alternative pathways that you just saw sort of get blended into what they're calling the new permanent pathways. So students, this class actually can take advantage of them. The state said we can use them with this class, but for the classes of 21 and 22, the alternative pathways that you saw before are technically gone. They become part of this new permanent pathways that students can do, or they can do those 3 head-on pieces. And then when we get to the class of 2023, I don't think I made a graphic for this, those 3 boxes on the left for OST, industry credentials and ACT or SAT remediation free go away, and it all just becomes these new permanent pathways. So that's your current freshmen that are walking in our doors right now will be operating under those new pathways. And that would be a whole nother presentation if you wanted to hear about those ones.
Thank you. And Marcy represents teaching and learning. So why are we giving this presentation to you? Because everyone in this room, even the folks in the audience, the media, we need for you to team up with a high school and dedicate your time. I've challenged our curriculum and instruction department, and now I'm challenging all of you. How can you help students get to the promised land of walking across the stage? Okay? That is very important to us. It's very important to them. And we know that when they're walking across the stage, it's not about the diploma that's waiting for them. It's the many opportunities in the real world that's waiting for them. And that's what we're trying to gear our students to. So if you want to team up with a school, please contact one of our fabulous principals here. Work with them. Ask them how you can help. And I'm telling you, they will put you to work. Trust me. Okay? Because we're trying to meet our goal. We're trying to be above 93%. Because we don't want to leave 7% behind. All right, we're trying to get to where we're supposed to be, and that's 100%, and that's how you become a #1 Urban. Not talking about it, being about it, doing it, taking action, and making it happen for all of our students. So thank you for the time, and we appreciate it.
It's a lot of information, and I know you asked, or you had some kind of link where we were supposed to put questions. And I know many of us are not as tech savvy.
So you're going to fail the C434.
We're going to fail it tonight. We need a little help. And especially a little love tonight. So I'm sure there are board members who have questions.
Put mine in.
Patrick is on top, but if you want to verbalize your questions, if anybody, or Morgan, whoever else wants to share. I think some questions have been already put up, and if there are some additional ones.
So priority status schools, you mentioned 5 schools that had received priority status, but the chart showed 4. AAA was not included on the chart. Okay, so it was those 4 schools in AAA.
I apologize because some of my questions were kind of notes for myself. Like,
Oh.
really, each
Okay.
class has
Yeah,
a
because
different
I'm looking at like, well,
pathway
where's
to
the question at in this one?
But specifically though, is there help that you all feel like you could use tomorrow or today or like yesterday from community members, from us? Are there specific things that are maybe more at building level, it sounds like would be most helpful, but any general things that you could?
I know one of the things we could use is support for mentors for the Capstone Project. Each student's required to have a mentor. At STEM alone, I have 80 students doing individualized capstones, and they need a mentor for feedback for those. Currently, I have my academy coach trying to work through College and Career Academy system to help get those with our community partners, but we tend to fall very short on that.
So for the last 2 years, Mr. Black, don't stare at me. So for the last 2 years, we had graduation mentors. They were long-term subs that we got sometime as the year started. I would attribute a significant portion of our success to their diligence. Their job was to ensure that these students graduated, and they pulled them out of classes, they checked their homework, they checked their capstone, they checked the hours that they had to make sure that they had everything that they needed. It was an essential part of our success. That was actually part of the resources. So that's a great question. I'm glad that you asked. Notice I'm not making any eye contact with Mr. Black.
Okay, and for the 5-year graduation rate, yes. Kenya, I'll let you
Yeah,
take that
so
one.
when you think about the state is looking at the 4th and 5th year graduation rates for our report card. But the federal government, if you remember in the presentation in 17-18 is when they looked at how things were outlined and made that change. So right now, buildings with priority designations or focus designations will be that way until 2021, where they'll look at things again unless they change it and grant us some more time. But as a district, we're looking at both for different reasons, so we have to pay attention. When you think about the state's looking at 4th and 5th year graduation rates for our own individual district report card and building individual report cards.
Okay, and yes, we do push the first traditional pathway. Every student must work to meet the first pathway, 21 credits, 18 points on the OST, and they have to continue to retake that until they get the points necessary. In March is where we make a decision about the alternative pathway, but as you heard some of the principals, they already start the students working towards those with the understanding that they're also preparing them to retake the test in December for those that still need points. So we continue to push the first pathway. We actually push the first pathway with a blend of all of the other things, because even if a student is on track to graduate, it doesn't hurt them to graduate with a credential so that when they're in college, they can work and earn money with a credential. Okay? Yes, sir.
A question that Lisa asked that I really, it's a really good question that I'd like to maybe supplement a little bit about having an easy way for parents to see electronically where their students stand and do they understand the pathways. And I think, you know, because we had a mantra a while back where we had the 3 numbers with, you know, the credits and the points and the, I'd like to echo that a little bit and ask that question. My kid's in STEM middle school. My apologies to whichever one of you is lucky enough to be blessed by his presence. He's a wonderful kid. But I find myself logging in from time to time, and I'm one of those parents who is, I'm constantly logged in, and I have his logins for everything. And I'm looking at Blackboard and Google Classroom, and I'm getting the Remind, and I'm getting the emails, and I'm getting, but it's all of these different platforms, all of these different places, all of these different ways to look at everything. Some teachers use, for example, the Blackboard calendar. Some use more Google Classroom. Some use Remind to send things out. Some use email to send something out. And I'm all over the place trying to coordinate into one place. And it made me think when you asked about the graduation and whether or not this is something for Forecast 5 that can do on the academic side, is there like this colorful, easy meter or chart or thermometer or something or when you're putting in that, creating that secure password and you start to check all the boxes with the uppercase and lowercase, is there something that tells parents in a very easy, almost a 3rd grade way that you are check, 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 and we've got these red places that we need to work on? Is there one standardized, easy way for parents to see that?
Yes, and that's when they sit down with their counselor will take them to the graduation screen. So when you sit with your counselor, but not for you to access on your own, but through the counselor. And I know Howard and his team, they work all the time to design the data dashboards, you know, for the counselors to share with the students. And also, we encourage students through the work that Dream Whitfield is doing, is to store this within their career cruising, so that they're using their career cruising to share with you the different buckets and the pathways as those connect and cross over to one another. So the career cruising for the parents and the students to share, okay? And again, that's another platform. And then when they sit with the parents, there's when you heard some of the principals talk about the data conversations that they'll be having at interim pickup, they'll take you through the screen to show the buckets that was created by our tech department of graduation, on track, off track, and things that they need to accomplish.
I think we have some response.
The one graduation requirements letter that's sent home. The one letter that's sent home that says you need 4 credits of English to graduate. Your student has earned 3. They're scheduled in 1 now. So it's not digital, but it is a letter that's sent home. We generally start that in 10th grade, mailing that letter home so they can see, to really start tracking. We don't do it before then because they haven't had the opportunity to earn that many credits, and it's kind of disheartening to the student. So once they're almost halfway there, we start that letter.
Well, I would say that a digital format sometimes is even difficult for parents. I have kids too, and there's nothing that replaces that meeting with your commitment pathway form, that you're signing off, that you know this is the pathway my child needs to be able to graduate. Because unless you're having that one-on-one with that counselor or the principal, it's difficult to understand all of these different pathways that kids can take, and why can't you just blend them all? That's not how it works. So there's really nothing that replaces it. And, you know, I know there's a lot of formats out there because we use all of them, but they're all unique. So Remind is so no one can text you back and say things. You're just getting that remind. And, you know, with Google Classroom, so if you're absent, you have a place to go to. So I think the digital format's great, but I think it would be even confusing for parents. Nothing replaces that conversation. So when that parent is signing off on their child's commitment form, they know this is the path we're going to take, so this is how I have to support my child at home.
And I think it's going to be a hard conversation either way. Even if you could click on it and access it, if you could see everything. I think, especially with the new graduation requirements potentially for your child, the conversation, even as a board member, is going to be cumbersome and complicated and sometimes clumsy. So it's not something that I would risk leaving to parents to say, okay, Billy's okay, right? He's okay. I'll talk to you in senior year. I think it would be nice if we had that, but it still wouldn't replace that necessary conversation, because this graduation is relationships are required, and that's part of it.
So I think Mr. Johnson, you may have answered part of my question, but the question I have is, you have some parents who are not involved in the kids' education or the process, and sometimes they're hard to get to reach. What are we doing to try to reach some of those parents so we can get hold of them, so they can in turn work with their child to make sure they're on point? I don't know how we do that, but there's always a small percentage of parents out there we need to get involved in their child's educational process. So what can we do to make sure that happens?
And I think when I think about how we're doing that, there's many different ways that we are trying to reach out to the families, whether it's phone calls, whether it's the interpreters trying to reach out to the families, the family liaison, the academy principals, doing data interim nights. I think we're doing multiple things to continuously try and reach those parents in whatever way is possible. If we know the families, again, going back to the relationship piece, if we know the families or know somebody who has relationship, we're utilizing those avenues to make sure that the families understand exactly what the student needs to graduate and make sure it's very clear.
Okay. And that kind of answers a little bit more, because I was trying to get to how we target them. Because sometimes it may not be that we or you or somebody else. It might be someone who's in the community, such as what you guys have, which is unique up there in Northfield, that you have all those individuals who can reach out, and they know the community members, they know the families, you can kind of go through them.
I think it's knowing the student and knowing what is going to work. For example, I was texting the soccer coach today. The soccer coach is not a teacher in the building, but I know she has a relationship with a specific student, and I was finding out exactly where is that student, why have they not been there, and what's going on with them. So it's really whatever avenue we have possible.
I think also every school develops its own kind of community.
Right.
And if kids don't have that support, we end up providing that support.
Right.
And, they become our adopted students.
And I know you guys did that too with the one-year valedictorian last
Right.
year.
So that happens with all the schools.
Very, very good. Thank you.
I just want to say I really love the diversity that I'm hearing across the line here, because no one thing fits every student. And you guys are diversified. You can hear what you're saying. It just depends. And each school should have and does have its own culture. You learn your students in the different ways that they respond to different processes and things like that. You try to incorporate it or do the best you can to help them to be successful. So, I mean, I love this whole conversation, a dialogue, and what you guys have presented and shared with us, because it shows that, you know, you get it. You know, we have different students at each school, so we have to provide opportunities and the pathways for them to learn and be successful. And it sounds like you guys, that's what you're doing. You're observing your students, and you grab hold to that, and you try to find the right way to address the issues so they can be successful. So thank you so much.
Okay, Lisa, you had
I was just mouthing to Bruce across the table too. That's equity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's giving the students what they need, and that's exactly everything we're going for. One of the things that I don't want to let go past is to give you all kudos for navigating an absolutely incredibly stressful process that, you know, with the state not, when did they even approve it last year? It was so late. It was so stressful. And yeah, it was really, really late. And you know, we were all holding our breath. And the rates, the jump in rates is phenomenal. It's absolutely fantastic. So kudos to all of you for that. I don't want to let time go past without saying that. And the other thing I guess I would say, this is just soapbox since I already threw out questions, and that is, I think we need to, as a society, maybe as a district, as a city, you know, parents battle over who's going to be the room parent for a kindergarten classroom. They, you know, you can't even get in there if you want to be the one who's there volunteering. But more and more, the way this is set up, our parents disappear. And I was one of those parents that sat with Mr. Johnson, and lots of people in the room cried, including me, trying to get to that place. We need to encourage parents to not go away just because they're in middle school and it's a tough period, and then you're in high school and you don't understand this, because it's changing so vastly. I have one that's 8 years older than my youngest. The graduation requirements were so completely different 8 years ago. So keeping parents engaged, please stay engaged. Please, if you don't understand, these are wonderful resources, these folks in front of you. All of our counselors are incredible resources. They will sit down with you and explain it to you if you don't understand it. It is not showing up and having a good attendance rate, passing a class, and walking across the stage anymore. And that's, in so many cases, what our parents did. Sure, now we might have some who had to pass some form of graduation test before they graduated, but it's not this, and it's complicated. So please don't hesitate as parents to ask for help.
Yes.
I think, yeah, I would like to also echo, this is probably one of the best presentations we've had since I've been on the board, and I love the fact that all of you took time out tonight to come sit with us. This was really good. And I think it also underscores what you were just saying. I mean, a plea to folks to recognize the correlation between attendance, which you brought up earlier, and graduation. If our kids are there, I mean, just statistically speaking, and so how we can focus on that, and some of you touched on that throughout your opening remarks, but if we could really encourage folks to get their kids to school and keep them in school, then we've probably hit half the battle right there. So,
And having a relationship. So if you do have students that for some reason aren't there, that relationship. And that's the other piece that I've heard more than anything else today. And I think that that's what college and career academies are going to help with too. But also, they didn't wait. They didn't wait till we had full implementation of college
on
and
the
career.
resourcefulness of, talking to the coaches. I mean,
Absolutely.
you guys know it. How
Right.
to, yeah.
Relationship.
Star Trek. Venture to go where no man has gone before.
All right, so thank you guys for the feedback. Our next order of business, we will be, Karen Gigic, myself, and the principals in our graduation committee will be bringing, we have to, by June 2020, have policy in your hand to approve the 3 new seals for the graduation class of the students who are currently 8th graders. The seals are a community seal, an engagement seal, and a fine arts seal, okay? So pretty much when Marcy was talking about the pathways being wrapped into different areas, those are the 3 areas where they're wrapped into. And then we have to have a policy in place for 4-year plan interventions for every student, okay?
All right. Want to thank Mr. Black, want to thank our staff, want to thank our campus principals for your time, your outstanding presentation. We know it's hard work, and you have given the effort and dedication in your individual buildings. I know it's been a long meeting even thus far, but I just need to do one thing before the principals leave, because you have some excellent students who are behind you, and we have a new student board member that we did not introduce. So, beginning with our early college board member, stand, give your name, and then we'll go straight across. If a principal will hand them a mic, give us your name and which school.
Hi, my name is Salam Said, and I'm from Akron Early College High School.
And grade? What grade?
Sophomore.
Hi, my name is Addison Johnson, and I am a senior at STEM High School.
What grade are you in?
Senior. And our new board member.
Hi, my name is D.S.S. Jackson. I'm from Bookta, and I'm a freshman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Manisa Rai. I'm senior at North High School.
Hello, everybody. I am Nathaniel Smith. I'm a senior at Elliott High School.
My name's Kyrese Brunson, and I'm a junior at East High School.
Hi. Sorry. Hi, I'm Luke Buckingham. I'm a junior at Firestone.
And then we want to thank Dreamer Mason Whitfield. And we have one other student who's not here. And all right, Kenmore. Thank you so very much. Okay, we have the approval of our meeting minutes for September 9th.
So moved.
Been moved, properly seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call. And again, thank you.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
All right. Our personnel recommendations.
Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 45 personnel recommendations in categories 5 through 16. I would also like to point out in recommendation 16.1, I regret to report the death of Scott Bennett, grounds maintenance operator 1 on Sunday, September 15th, 2019. Mr. Bennett has been an employee of the Akron Board of Education since February of 2006. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Next, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 1 motion and 8 resolutions on the consent agenda in category 21. And I know Mr. Pendleton wants to address a couple of items in those motions. Other than that, these recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
Do you want to hear from you now or after we pass?
Yeah, let me, if it could, I'll give the corrections to you now before you make motions so you have the most accurate information. You received the September 23rd Resolution 21.3 permanent appropriations for fiscal 2020. You received an update of that. That is in your permanent file, just so we've got that on the record. And the other one, since it's an attached report, on page 6 of the monthly financial report, sorry to give you the numbers and details. What was reported was $354,013,713 for the record, and as corrected is $304,796,593. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need a motion.
So moved.
Been moved and properly seconded. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Roll call.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And finally, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 18 business affairs recommendations in Category 23. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So move.
Second.
It's probably moved and seconded. Any questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes. Superintendent's report.
Last week, we had our quarterly Ohio 8 Coalition meeting, and a big topic of the conversation was, of course, the language being floating back and forth around academic distress. You know, it basically, for a district getting an F on the report card would have, right now, the current language is 6 years. It may be pared it down to 4 with some additional help from ODE. So we're keeping abreast of the developments in the State House regarding academic distress commissions.
Okay. No president's report at this time, other than, please remember, as we mentioned at the last meeting, consider any topics that you may have as we consider a retreat sometime in November. And a place, not necessarily here, but you might want to think about a place off-site for our retreat. So if you would let me or Tim Miller know, I would appreciate it. So we begin to make some plans for that. Okay, treasurer's report.
A few items to report on tonight. One is in response to House Bill 166, which contained the new funding or the biennium budget, contained student wellness and success funds. You've been hearing a lot about student wellness and success. School districts around Ohio have been getting their hands around how to use these funds. Guidance has been forthcoming from a couple different departments, from the Auditor of State and the Ohio Department of Education. Just to recap on these funds, the current foundation, basically what schools are funded, received a 0% increase. This part hasn't been communicated well. What's only been reported has been the increase in the success and wellness funds as additional monies, and that's not really the case. We're going to get into that a little bit more at the next board meeting, in which we'll review the 5-year forecast for the first board meeting in October. APS currently spends about $16 million a year already on initiatives that fall under the categories of success and wellness funds. For the first year, we'll receive about $5 million additional dollars and $7 million the second year. Well, we all appreciate the investment in areas that we and Akron Public Schools have been talking about for a very long time: social, emotional, security, life supports, and those wraparounds that are of utmost importance to us. Again, we spent about $16 million on programs already. So working with the superintendent board and the staff, generally speaking, our plan is to evaluate, enhance, and to support our current offerings. Now, what that means is we will likely supplant a lot of those spending dollars. Okay, and we'll get into the details again at the next board meeting, but I just want to offer up some thoughts as we come into this with suppose the marketing approach to this is that these are new monies hitting schools all around Ohio. But since we didn't receive any additional base aid dollars, this is actually less than what I was forecasting previously. I'd forecasted a 3% increase in state funding, which is not uncommon for a new governor's budget when there's carryover dollars at the state budget. That's not uncommon. This falls just short of that. So we'll put that in perspective next week. At the 2 committee meetings we've had over the last 2 weeks, legislative, legal and policy, and finance, we also talked about Academic Distress Commission, which the superintendent touched on. House Bill 305, the quick update there is we're expecting comments, changes to House Bill 305 from the Speaker And we're also looking for a companion bill from the Senate to partner with that to hopefully move this along. So stay tuned on that. There is going to be an ad hoc meeting of likely BASA and OASBO at the OSBA annual conference coming up in a few weeks on the expansion of Ed Choice scholarships that could have large 6 figures or 7-figure impact on the expansion of our scholarship or voucher program. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We need a motion?
No.
No, okay. Any questions of the treasurer's report? All right. Hearing none, our committee reports, legal contract and board policy committee.
We met on September 16th last week, and we were also joined by Nicole Mullet for part of the meeting, who's the executive director of Arts Now. We discussed some public art policies. So Akron right now is looking at a cultural plan for the city. It's the first time in its history, and we thought this was really good timing for the district to also be looking at what this cultural planning process could look like and what public art policies might make sense for our district. So we talked about several factors that need to be considered when we're approaching how we're going to install a piece. That's like maintenance, equity and how we picked the piece, cultural sensitivity, donations, and just to name a few. There's a lot to consider when we say yes or when we say no to a piece of public art on board-owned property. So we're going to continue to review some of the policies that may come out of the Akron cultural planning process, but then also look across at other districts to see, do they have existing policies, or are there any in Ohio that seem to work, or any nationwide? And then we're also reviewing building and general naming policy for our district. We've looked at a couple of examples from similar Ohio districts, and this is about naming or renaming any of our board-owned facilities. That's things like buildings, athletic fields, stadiums, gyms, libraries, multipurpose rooms, and we're doing a lot of review there with some of the rest of the team as well before we actually create a policy for Akron.
And I want to thank my colleague, Morgan, who reached out to Nicole to bring her in so we can kind of discuss some of these things, because that gives a little bit more better outlook of what we need to do as far as public art. And what we also did, we have updates from Neola, and Neola has recently released updates for our committee, which we will be reviewing, and we'll be coordinating with appropriate departments, because we need to get their input. Each department has their own policy and procedures they need to bring to the committee so we can look at it, so we can get it to the rest of the board for their approval, and then we kind of move forward. So we're going to be looking at that to get their input so we can start in those areas. Also, as far as legislation, it's a number of topics that surrounding legislation. We talked about the academic commission, Academic Distress Commission, which our superintendent brought up a little earlier, because that is something that's kind of hurt some of the school districts, our partnering in neighboring school districts here in Ohio, and they're talking about that committee. Also, the grade cards. We talked about the grade cards and what is going on, what's happened there. House Bill 305 was another topic of discussion, which we'll be digging deeper into. And then we also talked about and looked at education choice expansion. So the policy committee is going to be very busy here pretty soon. There's a lot coming down the pipe for us. So stay tuned, and we'll be getting you information. And once we get it from staff and get their input and what we feel will be a final view for you to get to you for your viewing and your input, and then we will move forward for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Our Finance and Capital Management Committee?
We met on September 16th, and a lot of what we talked about at that meeting, our CFO already went over as far as academic distress, the grade cards, House Bill 305, and Ed Choice. We also reviewed the 2020 appropriations, which we passed tonight as well. The one thing that we haven't talked about a lot is we were solicited by, I believe it was Ohio School Board Association, but the Ohio Schools Council Consortium on pricing for electricity for schools. And that prompted the CFO's office to take a look at what we're paying and who we're using. And though it was a gut feeling that we had a good contract and to move forward with, it was a good exercise to take a look at it anyways, and we do have the best pricing that we can get. I think when you look at the Ohio Schools Council Consortium, it's probably set up more for the smaller school districts that don't have quite the clout that the larger school districts have.
Thank you. Instructional Policy and Student Achievement Committee?
We don't have much of a further report. We did have an update from College and Career Academies, and I promise that should be your spot. And that we talked about graduation today.
Yeah, well, just kudos for the graduation update, guys and girls. And you guys rock.
We do have a couple of invitations. I know on October the 11th, I believe, it's a full day. There's something happening at 9 a.m. at Cyberland. At 1 p.m., we're asked to be at First Energy. And is that correct? And those persons who can be there need to let the staff know. They will not allow you in the building without an RSVP. So please make sure you get that in beforehand. We don't want anybody who needs to be inside left outside because we didn't follow through. And then that evening at 5 is Project Grad. So there's a lot going on. I know on that day, there may be some other, are there any other key areas? But those are the key ones that are coming rather quickly before us. All right, any other unfinished business? Any new business? Yes.
Yes, Mr. President, in the board packet under Dear Board Member Letter, there is a AEA Memorandum of Understanding. This is for Buchtel grades 6 through 8, an effort working with staff and AEA to align the middle school school day with the high school. The staff worked on this summer, so we need a resolution passing it so it can be signed and included in our master agreement.
Okay. We do need to recess into
Are you seeking approval for that now?
Yes.
So we need a vote.
Yes.
We need to vote, sorry, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved, properly seconded. Any questions or comments?
I will say we did discuss that also in instructional policy. So that was discussed at the committee level as well. So.
Okay. Roll call then?
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Okay, do we need to go into executive?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't get my little yellow sheet. Pursuant to Section 121.22G, we need to go into executive session, and I need that.
What's the purpose? Which one?
And the purpose, I don't have on my
G1 personnel.
G1 personnel. Okay, thank you. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We will recess to our normal meeting area and then return back down to deal with the memorandum and any other things we might do.